background in psychology and software development. Worked with various nonprofits over the years. Interned with a company called Next Stage Evolution, and then worked in the Media Lab and most recently with IDCubed, as Joshua said. Now, my talk really this evening is going to be about measuring thought more than measuring happiness. And the concept is fairly simple, how we would go about that. The founder of Next Stage introduced me to this concept, and that was like, imagine you're sitting in class. Now, you have your professor talking, and they are monotone, and it's going very slowly and dragging on, and they're talking like this, and you're looking at the floor and the ceiling and the kid behind you. And then, like, it's so boring. Like, well, okay, so your next class, you're working on a project that fascinates you. You're very intent, you're sitting forward, you're looking at the pieces, you're really engaged in what's going on. So all you have to do is analyze the pressure on the chair legs, and you can start to figure out, is this person interested or bored, or are they actively learning or zoning out? And so it's a great concept. What really blew my mind was he had it working 10, almost 15 years ago. And some of the other things that it can measure. So gender, 98% accuracy. Age, 96% accuracy in 3.5 years. It can do a number of other things, including like cognitive behavior, emotion, a whole bunch of stuff. And a few of the topics that I'll touch on tonight include confidence, bullshit, linear thinking, and motivation. And so this is a report of my confidence in my own writing at a time where I had accepted an analyst position, and the guy who was the programmer for our team had lied about his capabilities and did not actually have the skills to make my job possible. And so getting into that situation, I wasn't confident in my own data. I wasn't confident in my communications, or in being able to do my job well for that matter. And this technology picked it up. So my confidence was like -80 on a -100 to 100 scale. Now, it might be tempting to fudge things in that scenario, and that's what the BS meter is for. So it actually measures, well, it's called Blue Sky up there, but this isn't my report. My report actually was 0 at the time. Joseph, the founder, emailed it to me. So while I lacked confidence, I was telling the truth. What you are seeing is the BS meter for my coworker who had lied about his skills. So these kind of technologies can be very useful for assessing potential relationships too. And though I never saw this chart for myself, Joseph had commented that I thought very linearly. And so it turns out that thinking linearly, like point A, point B, point C, is fantastic for lawyers. It's not so great for programmers. And so I began changing it. And I spent, along the way, I came to understand it as part of my linear thinking actually is a non-conscious defense mechanism that had developed during a time in my life when things were just very dark, and it was like, take one step in front of the other to get through this type of thing for an extended period of time. And those patterns got ground in, and so it's actually coming out in some of the measurements. Motivation. So the tools also said I responded best to certain kinds of arguments. Now, those that indicate the journey is in progress, indicate that emotionally direct me to avoid problems, and the most convincing of both of those, both. So a combination. And it was accurate. And I spent the last 3 years figuring out what was behind that and trying to change it. Why would I want to? Well, they came bundled in the same report with this. So this comment, tend to be more aware of their and others' failures rather than successes. So I saw problems. I saw things that needed to be fixed. I saw people with problems, and that's really how my family saw. That's how I was raised. But is that really how I wanted to be? So do I really want to be that guy? So, I mean, the guy at the party who is so, that points out your problems as you're talking. Like, oh, you have this going, and is not listening to you at all, just pointing out your problems. And then, okay, no, don't want to be him. Or it could be the guy who doesn't even notice your problems because I'm so focused on my own. In that context, that's not very fun either. Like, who wants to be with that person? And as a person who lived that way, and had that perspective, it sucks to live like that. So even if my motivation was just to avoid suffering, I wanted joy, and so I set out to change how I think. How? Well, mentors, counselors, friends, books, and analyzing every word, every action, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 years. It's still a lot of work, but life and friends are much, much, much more amazing and beautiful than I ever imagined possible when this journey started. So what now? I would love to show you pretty charts of my progress, but that internship ended. However, this kind of tech is just getting started. My passion is making it available for anyone who wants to use it to improve themselves, whether that be a person, a spouse, a friend, a business, or even a community. So what are my options? I could continue working with NextStage using their tools. There are some downsides to those tools. They're a bit expensive, like $600 per run. And for one report, that's pretty steep. They're also tailored for business. I was able to extract some stuff to learn about myself, but primarily for business. Also mostly about current state, not change. And they're also closed source, so can't learn about them, can't tweak them, can't improve them. And then finally, the data is locked away in NextStage's servers. So another option is to find other tools. So there are some fantastic companies working in that same direction. Ginger.io, Numitra, Affectiva, Moodscope, all are fantastic companies or organizations measuring things like stress, depression, excitement, and happiness. Unfortunately, most have similar issues, and none really broadly show me the color of my own lenses, like NextStage's technologies were able to do. So I could do it myself. Now, that's great in theory. However, I am not personally that great at fishing through data yet. I'm a programmer. I'm not a data scientist yet. So while I'm learning, though, I could build software to make it possible and easy for others who are. So what would we need? Ubiquitous programmable sensor platform, phone, check. Secure shareable data storage for collaborative work, check. Got that with ID Cubed. A way to easily learn from and build on each other's algorithms, APIs, and visualizations. That is in progress and has been underway for a few months. And so I'm considering naming the project simply Inside, because what's inside that matters. And so my hope is to be able to take the concept that I first was introduced to 3 years ago, that I spent 3 years learning about myself, changing my life, that has made such a difference beyond anything else, and actually make those types of technologies universally available in an open source way so that we can build on them, we can tweak them. And so, as I said, the project is already underway. We are also working with the city of Somerville to measure happiness there. And beyond that, it's a platform that we QSers as a community can use to make and share tools that measure whatever internal states we care about: thought, emotion, learning, motivation, etc. And on that note, I think I'll wrap it up. Thank you.
Questions? Just raise your hand if you have a question and Adam can call on you.
Sure. Yep.
Any questions?
Sure. Go ahead.
So what does it look like? I mean, what sensors are you using? What does it do? I guess it feels.
What does what look like?
So the platform you're trying to build?
Oh, okay. So it doesn't look like specifically anything yet. It's a question of, you know, what do we want to measure, and then what visualizations would we create based on that.
So what sensors do you need? They exist?
Sure. Like our phone has like 60 some sensors in it. So I mean, if we're just using 5, like GPS, accelerometer, things like that, there's a wealth of data in there. So I don't know fully what data is going to be necessary to determine what mental states, but my hope is to be able to create each of those as separate data sources so that you can actually just require a specific data source if you want to be able to use it to measure some internal state. Yes?
Where is the code, and what kind of code is it? What's the stack?
Okay, the code for this project? Yeah. Okay. That is it's in a repository right now that is one of ID Cube's repositories. It is publicly available, and the stack is built, right now I've done the UI in Angular and have the backend mocked up. And we're getting to the point now where we're about to start integrating the backend. And so it's at a very early stage. But yes, the code is completely available. I can get you that information for the repo and stuff. Yes. Yep.
Can you explain more on what you measured over the past 3 years and how you measured it?
So the way I measured it was basically rerunning those tools. So some of the things, I couldn't find one of the most recent reports that I was able to run, but showed that I had shifted my thinking from some of those negative motivations to actually being focused on benefits. So the contrast would be like avoiding a problem versus actually seeking a benefit. And so it's in that, like if I'm just avoiding problems and I'm seeing problems all the time, I'm not seeing the good stuff. And so that was really one of the biggest shifts, and that's been one of the most enjoyable things too. Does that answer your question?
What data went into that observation?
So NextStage's tools, they do a combination of linguistic analysis plus mouse movements. So a lot of the tools it can run was just XY coordinates, just based on when you're using a mouse on a website.
But also on the text that's outgoing or not?
On the text that's
So
outgoing?
You type text and then analyzes what words you use and frequencies and stuff like
Mhm.
that too?
Mm-hmm.
So what metrics did you use to analyze your thought processes? And is it passive analysis, like passively watching? Is it passive or is it an active test that you do whenever you do this?
It was an active test I had to do. So I mean, I would put in my own text or use one of the websites that had this running on it to be able to get those reports out of it. But there were never numbers. That's one of the things that drove me nuts. Like I could get the actual like, okay, you meet this state or like these characteristics for how you're thinking now. Awesome. But I had no numbers to be able to dig into that. And all the data was in NextStage's servers, and it wasn't open source. So there was no easy way to access it.
Do you know what metrics NextStage was collecting?
A lot. I don't know the full scope of it.
What the most significant ones were?
Because most of the things were for business, a lot of them were for like neuromarketing type stuff. So if I want to be able to market to certain genders, for instance, like they were able to do gender 98% accuracy just with a mouse. And so a whole bunch of that stuff would just run on websites. And so some of that demographic information, they could also tell, for example, like if you are on a website and you start getting confused, it would actually be able to tell that, like the threshold at which you got confused. And so you could use that for like pages where it's like, oh, okay, this page is confusing people after about 15 seconds, what's going on here? And be able to use that to improve the pages. So there was a variety depending on the type of marketing materials you would send out. There was a slide I showed, there was a whole bunch of different bars stacked, and here I can come back here. This one. Okay, so this is a bunch of the cognitive characteristics and stuff. I snagged this from a book, which he wrote about this technology. And so this was a chart that I haven't seen for myself, but like, each of those different things is some cognitive characteristic. This was a middle-aged attorney, and that was a spike. That particular circled one there was a spike that came out for some reason with attorneys. And it was that kind of logical, linear point A, point B, point C thought.
Last question.
Go ahead.
How do you avoid like self-referentiality and like a lot of those like, so like you go age, sex, and it's like with you, and then you just start making up words. How do you like what kind of outside metrics do you use to prove to yourself that you're not just making things up, putting numbers to?
I have nothing to compare it against. That's the problem. Like, like I want to be able to create these open source tools so that we have something to compare it against. So that we have something that many people can look at the code, that many people can say either that makes sense or it doesn't, and really be able to contribute to that. And so, yeah, I couldn't.
Thanks so much, Adam.
Thank you.